Welcome to the Cookbook, where we invite guests on to share the ingredients of what has helped make them the successes that they are. All of it, the good, the not so good. You're not going to find anything half-baked here. And our kitchen gets messy sometimes. That's when the fun starts. So come on and join us. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Cookbook. Actually, this is episode 1 of season 4. This is insane to me. I'm very excited about our guest today, Lady Jen Duplessis. I was on her podcast last year, and then she was going to be on my podcast, and then the two of us, life happens, we get busy. But we are making it happen today. So I'm going to read her bio and then bring her on. So who would have ever thought that little Jenny who ain't got a penny, now Dame Lady Jen, a member of the Royal House of Cappadocia, okay, we have to talk about all this, and the Royal Order of Constantine the Great and St. Helen, would be a charismatic and award-winning international speaker who brings her stories of sorrow, resilience, tenacity, and triumph to every stage she speaks. With numerous #1 best-selling books, hostess of 3 top-ranking podcasts, professional podcast guest, and producer and hostess of her TV show Business on the Vine, Lady Jen is certainly making her impact in the world. We have a lot in common with that. She is affectionately known as the team-building scaling architect. She is the leading expert in helping high-achieving business owners and executives build world-class teams so they can live the business lifestyle they always dreamed while scaling their business or company with grace and ease through enhancing interpersonal skills to obtain high-performance, tangible outcomes. Her recent awards include the 2024 Impact Mentor of the Year through IAOTP, the International Association of Top Professionals 2024. She leads Women of Excellence Award from her international speaking efforts, and 2023 Network of Outstanding Women Mentor of the Year. In addition, she received Easy Way Network Golden Gala Award for her heart-centered work in the world, as well as the Outstanding Leadership Recognition Award from the Los Angeles Tribune. She is devoted to her philanthropy and charity work, helping homeless women and children, eradicating human trafficking, U.S. military veterans, and animal shelters. You are like a woman after my own heart. She believes that we have acres of diamonds right under our feet and that we have everything we need to inspire people and leave our mark in this world. Her motto is move from working in and on your business to living above and beyond. So without further ado, let's meet Lady Jen.
Thank you so much. Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
No, thank you. I'm so happy that you fell out of the cracks and we were able to make this happen. But it's so funny in reading your bio. We have, I think, our life missions are so. We have a lot in common with that, and I love all of the philanthropy. I love all of the resilience. I was homeless when I was 19.
Oh, wow.
So, it's like all of the things that, are in your bio. I'm like, oh yeah, I can check that. I can check that. So except the awards, your awards are like, amazing. So how did the Lady Jen happen, and how did you become a member of the Royal House of Cappadocia? Did I say that right?
Yeah, Cappadocia. Yep, it's in Turkey. Yeah, thank you for asking that. Yeah, well, I've been a philanthropist all my life. I've always given back. I've always volunteered. I've always, done things for charities. And I received a phone call from a colleague of mine saying, hey, I've nominated you to be knighted. And you're going to be receiving a call from the prince. And I was like, ha, ha, ha. Sure I am. And he said, no, really, there are a multitude of royal houses around the world, when everyone says, especially with Lady Jen, I go by Lady Jen, but people say, is that Lady Gaga or Queen Latifah? It's a marketing ploy. And I said, no, actually I'm knighted, from a royal house. And people always say, well, is that England? And I go, the House of Windsor. This is just the House of Cappadocia. It's a different house. So it started with my philanthropy work being recognized for that. And then the second level of acceptance is, what I'm doing in the world in my line of work, whether I'm an artist or a musician or a doctor or an entrepreneur, right? An innovator. What am I doing with my work, and how am I contributing back to my community and the world in my work? There are a lot of people that have entrepreneurial aspirations, and they work and they make money and they keep it and they don't do much with it, right? So I was recognized for that as well. So a couple years ago, I was invited to be knighted into the Royal House, or the Royal Order of Constantine the Great and St. Helen, which is part of the Royal House. And it's the oldest order of knighthood in the world. We were established in 360 AD, and there's less than 800 of us in the world now. And it's all about charity and faith, and it's not Christian based. It's just faith in people, right? Mm-hmm. Charity and faith and chivalry and honesty and all of those things. And our mission is to help homeless women and children, as well as gals that are trafficked. And among other things, we just had a meeting today, and we're always for anything and everything that we can do, right? So it's just a great honor. And I have a sword. I just got my sword not too long ago. I have to get it on here so that people can see it.
I mean, I have my lightsabers on here. You should definitely have your sword.
Yeah. It's huge. It's huge. I don't have my crown. I don't have my jewels. I have my plaque behind me, but yeah, so it's just a great honor. And yeah, I got a call from Prince Raphael, and, he's just wonderful. He's, 78 years old now, and his, I believe his grandson will take over, but yeah, when he goes, but yeah, there's a long story about it. And, we have a monarchical chapter that we always want members of. You simply can go to myroyalorder.org, and you can find out about the monarchical chapter, which is where we get donations to do the work that we do. And we encourage everybody to be a member of that.
Wow. That sounds amazing. I mean, the whole, and I love the fact that it's for homeless women and children, and that it's, focusing on trafficking, because there's so much of that going on. Yeah. I was reading this article here that there are on the interstates, there are rest stops that are like, they're where truckers stop and take showers and all that stuff. Yeah. And there are trafficking spots there. And I read that, and I was just like, oh my God. To think like in Indiana that, so I'm grateful that you're doing that work, because, so many people out there don't get it. They don't get the danger.
Well, and it's sad too, because we have a St. Helen home in Hawaii in Honolulu. And I said, well, how many girls are trafficked here? I mean, you're on an island, for God's sakes. But there are some 50,000 girls that are trafficked, and I'm sure boys too. But we went to the St. Helen House, and we had 18 girls there at the time. They can stay there until they're 18, or I think it's 18 months. It's like 18 and 18. They're there for 18 months or until they turn 18, and then they, have to leave. And we help provide them some place to go. We don't just let them out of jail and let them go. But it's amazing to see the girls that have been there for 2 weeks versus those that have been there for 8 months. They are still in that promiscuous arena, because that's what they think they need to be doing. They don't talk. There's no eye contact. But as soon as they get the mental, emotional, physical, educational, assistance that we do, we have a school there and everything. As soon as they get all of that, you can see that they start reblossoming again. And one of the things I've learned about this, and Frank Perdue, we all know Perdue Chicken, his wife, Minky, she's a friend of mine, and she works with a lot of trafficking, as prevention of trafficking as well. And the thing that we don't realize is that most of the girls are handed over, and boys are handed over by their family members for money. And so it's not that they're stolen or kidnapped or anything like that. Their parents sell them, their aunts and uncles or brothers and sisters, sell them for money. And that's what's really sad about it.
Oh my, That I had no idea.
Yeah. So anyway, anything that we can do to help anybody who's, in charity, I'm all for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I run a small not-for-profit here with my friend Michelle, called Unmasking Lafayette, and it unmasks, social issues that we have in our community. So we work with usually smaller organizations, and we raise money and awareness for them. So,
I'll tell you, I live in the wealthiest county in the United States. You can go look it up and find out what county I live in Virginia. Wealthiest county in the United States per capita, right, of income. And we have over 25,000 homeless kids in our county.
I believe it. Suffolk, Nassau County, Long Island, same thing, right? That's like one of the richest counties in the country. And they have, I don't even know how many homeless. It boggles my mind that, and it goes back to greedy people on the top keeping the money for them, and the rest of the folks, having to really scrape. And it's sad because you see these kids. Like I said, I was homeless when I was 19, but I gave back to the shelter after I got my act together. And I saw, mothers come in with their kids, and they've been sleeping in their car all winter, and then the car broke down and they had no heat. They had nowhere to go. Or it was, summertime and they were sleeping in the park or whatever. And, if somebody threw, food out in they had leftover food, they would take their food. It is heartbreaking, and it shouldn't happen here. It shouldn't, and it does.
No, and it does. But it happens all over the world, and that's why this particular our royal order is all over the world. I mean, we are Christians, we're Buddhists, we're non-believers, there's nothing that holds us together as far as that goes. We're all just human trying to make a difference, and that's really what our goal is. So, and you'll be hearing it more about here in the U.S. because the expansion of the Royal Order has come to the U.S. Whereas before it was all in, for us, right? Because we're in America, it was all foreign countries. If you're listening, you're from a foreign country. I know you're not foreign. We are, right? But it was all, foreign countries. And because our prince has 3 principalities. He has, Cappadocia. He has someplace in Spain, or he's from Spain. Then we have another place in Italy, and then Belize. So he's got 3 different sort of called kingdoms, but they're called principalities now because you don't really own the land, you own an area. And, and so now it's kind of branching into the U.S. So you're going to see it more and more that people here in the U.S. will have the titles of sir and lady or dame. Either one is fine. But you're going to start seeing it more because we're being asked to contribute more than we ever have before. Well, I hope that we can with our impending stuff coming up. So, because then it's going to be needed, I think, more than ever. I just hope it's allowed because I have no idea what's coming. I don't think any of us do. Yeah.
No. So how did everything, because it says, Jenny who ain't got a penny, how did all of this, what was your journey to entrepreneurship and to ladyship and to, philanthropy? What was your...
Yeah, well, I mean, the story about Jenny who ain't got a penny is that I'm one of 36 first cousins, and every one of us had a nickname by 2 of my uncles. We had Stan the Man and Gene the Machine and Loads Lori, and not so much Loads Lori. They would just call her Loads. I still call her Loads. They call me Jenny. Mine just happened to be Jenny who ain't got a penny. The only problem with that is that at the time that I was called that, my mom and dad, I was the only child. Only sibling that had an only child. And I didn't have siblings until I was 13 years old when my mom and dad finally had another child.
Wow.
And just, that long. And so I didn't quite understand it, except that I was this lonely Jenny who didn't have any siblings. My mom and dad were the poorest of all the family. My father was an alcoholic. My mother was a verbal abuser. She was my first bully. And, so they felt bad for me and said, oh, poor Jenny who ain't got a penny. And of course, back then remember the penny loafers. We actually put pennies in your loafers, or I had pennies in my shoe. And so I always had a penny in my shoe and I would, ha, 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 and pull the penny out. I have a penny, but I didn't quite understand it. He told me I'd be worthless. He told me I'd be an alcoholic. He told me I'd be poor. He told me all those things, all these uncles. And looking back on it, and now, he just passed away this year, my uncle. I'm grateful because I think I could have gone down that road and that path of alcoholism and, everything. But it did make me become a perfectionist because if I was perfect, Dad wouldn't drink. And if I was perfect, Mom wouldn't yell. And so then I just became this perfectionist that I wanted to prove to them. There's other stories that triggered everything, but I wanted to prove to them and others that I wasn't going to be Jenny who ain't got a penny. So, I set out on all these competitive natures. I was runner-up Miss Colorado. I was a tennis champion. I played flute and piccolo in the Colorado Springs Symphony when I was in high school. You name it, I did it, right? Because I was achieving, and I'm waiting for them to say they're proud of me or good job or, you've won or whatever it was. And so I always felt like I wasn't worth anything because I wasn't doing enough to warrant that pride that they would tell me or that great job or the pat on the back, none of that. And that perpetuated into my work career. And, I became the best at everything I did. I was in the mortgage business for 40 years. And I was top in the country, top 200 loan officers out of 1 million, funded over $1 billion in loans, which very few have done. Just top. And that constant proving. And then, one day I just said I'd had enough of proving and I wanted to start living. And I changed the way that the trajectory of my life was going to go, even though I wanted so badly not to repeat history. Mm-hmm. I found myself repeating history by having work be my alcoholism. And me bullying my kids in the matter of, don't you realize that I'm on this phone for you? I'm trying to make a buck. I'm trying to survive. I'm trying to make sure that we have money. I'm trying to be successful. And you are preventing me by pulling on my skirt while I'm talking to a client on the phone, right? So I had really just become this bully to them as I tried to prove and be perfect on the other side for being my dad, and being this workaholic. And I just had enough. And I set out to find a way that I could do the volume of loans that I was doing. And I was in the top 1% at that time. I ended up being in the top 0.003%, but at the top 1%. But I thought, gosh, I just want to find a way that I can do it and have a life. I want to find a way that I can do the same amount of volume I'm doing, the same revenue I'm generating, but I want to be able to do it in 4 days a week. And so I set out to do that. And of course I did. I tripled my income. I tripled my production. And I tripled the time I had with my family. And I've not looked back, and my mom used to say to me, you have such a great quality of life. Because you get to go here and there because we have money, right? So we go here and there. And she said, and the kids do this and they've been to Hawaii and, and they're 13 and 14. And I was 40 by the time I got there, taking it with me, right? But they have all these things. And you have such a great quality of life. And then I slept on that. I woke up the next day and I looked at my husband and I said, I don't want a quality of life. I want a life of quality. And for me, that was profound. I don't want to keep up with the Joneses. What I want to keep up with is what I want. Right. And that's why I talk about in, on, above, beyond, because, most of us work in or on our business. And I just believe you shouldn't be doing either. You should be working above and beyond. And everyone's beyond is different. Some it's having another business. Others it's sleeping in. Some it's traveling. Some it's learning a new language or dancing. It's whatever your beyond or what your definition of success is. And so that was the path that I took. And so I've always been an overachiever in everything that I do. I wouldn't say I touch gold, touch everything and it turns to gold. I have to work hard, but I've been an overachiever in everything. I'm a constant learner. I never feel like I know all the answers. I still have so much more to learn. But I'm at a point in my life now where I don't need to work, haven't had to work for years, but I want to work. I want to give back. I want to impact. And I just definitely don't want other entrepreneurs to go through what I did. I have the shortcut, and I love sharing that shortcut.
That's awesome. And it's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine actually yesterday. I'm a professional singer, so for the longest time, I was like, I just want to find a band, but to play the music around here that I want to, our values don't align. I'll just leave it at that. So, for almost 6 years, I wasn't in a band, and then somebody reached out, and our values did align, and so now I joined this band. And I've been with them, I think, like 3 months, and we're doing our third gig on Friday. But it's so much fun, right? Because I get to do that. And I think that, at the end of the day, that's the key, is that we get to do things. Because there's so many people are like, I have to do this. I have to work with this client. I have to get up at 9 to feed the dogs. I have to. And for me, and I have it written right up here, right? It's like, I love that I get to help people. And I love that, I help businesses, I get to do these things. So, and that is like, it's so freeing, because it gives you that outlet that you need, right? So you can do the stuff that you do, you work with your clients, you do your thing, and then you get to do this other thing. And I think that's what we all achieve. I mean, anyone who goes into entrepreneurship with that, the expectation that every one of us goes in is to have freedom. And what we end up having is a low paying job that we work more hours and don't have insurance. Yep.
And so I want to change that for people. I want them to realize from day one, you can have that beautiful life of quality. You can be successful. You can buy your time by building a team, Right. And I've had people say to me before, the only reason you do that well is because you have a team. Exactly. That's exactly why, because I can't do it all myself, nor do I want to. Right.
But you also have to be able to be at that point that you can have a team, because,
I mean, I'm a believer to hire them day one. I hired my operations director. I don't call anybody an assistant. I hired my operations director the day I left lending, and I left lending on a Monday, and on Tuesday morning I was doing this.
Wow.
And that'll be 7 years ago, coming up here in March. And I hired her on that day because it gave me the momentum to not sit on my laurels with all the freedom I had.
Interesting.
And then a year goes by, and then 3 years go by, and your business isn't where you want it to be. So I hired her immediately. And we have to remember, if you hire someone for $50,000 a year, $60,000 a year, $20,000 part-time, you're not paying them $20,000 today. You're just buying some time so you can go and do what you do best and bring in the money that supports them, and they support you. So I'm actually of the opinion you should hire someone right away, even if it's 3 hours a week. You have to get into the mode of understanding that, hey, someone else is relying on me. So I've got to kick myself in gear instead of basking in the freedom I just got as this entrepreneur, right? Because you can become very complacent with it.
Yeah. And it's not, I mean, there are a lot of people that, for me, when I first became an entrepreneur, it was out of necessity, not out of, not like leaving corporate and saying, oh, I'm going to do this. I was working for a company. Our values didn't align. I got fired. And it was like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do I, I'm not one to sit home and collect unemployment. Right. So I was like, I got to figure something out. And then one of my clients from that job said, let's start a business together. And I went, we met and, weighed the pros and cons and said, okay, let's do it. And it was the best thing that I ever did. We're not partners anymore, but, and I kept everything in my name because we were in 2 different states. So I, was pretty smart about it. But, at the end of the day, when I look back on everything and that was 10 years ago, how everything started and, where it is now, and the business acumen and knowledge that I had then and that I have now is like night and day.
Okay.
And I know I'm going to be on yours next week, and we're going to look at do like a review, and it's night and day, even in a year.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why building a team also from the very beginning, elevates you to a leader. You're mandated to be a leader. If you get stuck in, 3-4 years of being a solopreneur and doing everything, it's harder to let go, even though you're probably, if your business is thriving, you're at a capacity where things are falling through the cracks anyway, but you don't see it. And so you're like, well, I want a mini me, which is the worst thing in the world. You don't want a mini you, because a mini you is things are falling through the cracks. You want someone who can fill the gap on things you don't like to do or that you're not good at doing. And, so to your point, with partnerships and the growth that you have and I think that you are, because I have years and years of management and team building and leadership and training, and I was all of those, but you have to first be a manager, and then you can be a leader. You can't be a leader without knowing how to be a manager. And there's key differences in how you function in each one of those categories. And a lot of entrepreneurs are great widget makers and decide that they can have a widget making company, but they don't have the skill set to be able to bring people on. So even if they wanted to from day one, they might be afraid that if they bring someone on, they're not going to last long because they don't know how to hire people. They don't know how to keep people on. They don't have systems in place. There's a lot of reasons why, businesses don't grow or don't scale. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're in the scaling stage now. So I'm getting all my systems in place. And it's so funny because the person that I'm working with, laid the business out on a map. And it was like, oh crap, no wonder. Everything started clicking oh, okay. So, and I look at my my internal team, my external team, my, my client base, what's the onboarding process? What's, all the different things.
Everything.
Everything. And it was just it blew my mind. I told my wife, I was like, come here. And she's like, what? I'm like, that's the business right here. And she was like, holy shit. I went, I know. Who knew? Because I was just doing
all in your head. I mean, that's some of the
you're just doing the thing, right?
Yeah, because you're doing and doing and doing. And then when you hire someone, they don't know what you need them to do because you don't have it written down, but you hire them for the job title, thinking they're going to know how your company works. I mean, look, you could go into Chick-fil-A and be a cook, and then you could go to McDonald's and be a cook, and it's different. The job title is the same, or you could go to a high-end restaurant and be a cook. The job title is the same, but the job itself is different every single company. And if you're not prepared, we have a tendency to blame everybody else and point our finger and go, they were horrible. They were this, they were that. When we should in fact be thumb pointing at ourselves and saying, I was horrible. I was this, I was that. I wasn't ready. I didn't have the system.
I dropped the ball. And my team knows that if anything does fall through the crack or if anything happens, it's me. Yeah. It is not them. It's because at the end of the day, the buck stops.
SOP, right? Immediately, it's like, okay, let's put an SOP in play here, because they're needed. Even when you think you have it done, it's a living, breathing document. There's always something new. I remember when I first started.
Works in progress, I think, personally and professionally, right?
Well, personally, but from a mindset and mechanic perspective, but I remember when we first did our client experience, our system, for fulfillment, it included fax. Well, then we had to change it to email. And then we had to change it to something else. And we had to take it out because it didn't make any sense. Right. And so those progressions will happen, and your team needs to know what's happening and what's on your mind. And you have to relay it. There's not a veil between you and your team. There just can't be, because they are your voice. They're your message. And in order to empower them, they have to know exactly how you think. Otherwise, you're enabling them and they can't think on their own, and you're pulled back into the business constantly.
Yeah, we have a weekly team meeting just to kind of keep everything, going smooth and, what's going on this week, what do we have? And at some point I will, have an operations person so that I can pull myself out and they can have that meeting and
That's
then just send me, right? And then just send me a summary of the meeting so I know what's going on so I could do my thing. And because the best thing that I do is sales and talking to people and getting clients.
Right. And paying for that's how you're buying your team. You're buying your time, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So what, a lot of people listening to this are entrepreneurs. They're thinking about becoming entrepreneurs. They're, C-suite, they're in corporate and they're thinking about leaving. What advice would you have for somebody thinking about becoming an entrepreneur?
Well, I think, one of the things that we have to understand is that everyone has a different business DNA, skill set DNA, experience DNA, personality DNA, right? Everyone has that. So I don't think there's one answer for that. Immediately when I think C-suite, someone who's leaving that is they may have forgotten what it's like to do the everyday work. And that may be challenging for them. They have to learn how to do what is out there and available right now. I hate funnels. I hate writing emails. It's not what I like to do, but I learned how to do it so that I knew what the value was on hiring someone to do that. And so there's a lot of pieces I don't like. I don't like doing social media posting. I mean, it's very rare that I will do my own posting. My team does all my posting. I'll once in a while go in and say, hi, I was having a cookie or something like that. But they do everything because I don't like doing it. Right. But I don't ask them to coach people. I don't ask them to participate in masterminds. I don't ask them to speak on stage, right? So don't ask me to do your stuff either. So I think from a C-suite perspective, maybe a couple things would be just making sure that you go back down, you're in the ivory tower, go back down to the first floor and get some new blood so you understand what's relevant now, because once you're disconnected like that for so long, sometimes you miss out on the opportunity to be an entrepreneur. It's almost like you're past it. You're so overqualified for being an entrepreneur that you just don't have all the pieces. You know what you do in your job now, but you don't know about all the pieces. I think that's one thing. I think the other thing is to be careful. If you are a C-suite person and you got there through attrition, there are probably some gaps in your management and leadership skills in understanding how to read people, how to speak to people, when to talk fast, when to talk slow, when to talk loud, when to talk soft, right? All of those pieces may be missing, and you're stepping into something that is, if long as you want to be the sole person for the entire time, go for it. But if not, get those skills created before you make that move. If you're a widget maker and you think you can do it better than your boss, who's a widget making company, again, I would say you better understand P&Ls. You better understand finance. You better set everything up the right way. Nothing should be in your own name. You've got to have a corporate veil to protect you. Make sure that you're surrounding yourself with advisors that are giving you, advice from every aspect of your business, and that you vetted them before you even step into it. I was talking to someone who's been in business for about 8 years now, and she's never put together her operating system. She doesn't have her certificate signed for her corporation. She doesn't do monthly meeting minutes, and that's a $3,000 fine for each infraction. And that's scary. There's a report that has to be delivered here by the end of the year as we're recording this, right? That has to be at the end of the year. It's a $10,000 fine if companies don't file this report with the IRS.
It's so funny because I filed it, I guess, when they first said, whatever. And then I went to file it again and it said, error, this already exists. And I was like, well, then I don't know what you want.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard because if you have multiple, I've got like 18 businesses, so I have to do it for every single one of my businesses. Mm-hmm. And, it's like, did I get them all? Because I don't want that $10,000 fine. But these are little things that you need to surround yourself with smart people to help get you through, or learn it yourself so that you can handle it until you're ready to pass it off on other people. So the advice is get advice. right? Get a lot of advice and work with someone immediately to hit the ground running. And, I don't like 5,000-foot runways. I like a 500-foot runway. Let's get off the ground. Let's get things moving quickly, and make sure that you personally, your personal development is prepared, or at least a plan to prepare it.
Yeah, well, you definitely need a plan in place. And there are a lot of people that have been on here and that I have, spoken with just in general that, they start their business, and same thing with me. We have no idea, like what the ins and outs are when we first started. And so many people started thinking that, they're going to hit it rich in 6 months, and they're going to, like all the things are going to happen quickly. And that's not always the case.
Right.
But I also feel that, there's like this expectation of all of this, free time, like you talk about. And I just, for me, it didn't happen in the beginning. I mean, I have way more free time now than I did, but straight out of the bat, you have to me,
in the time. That's the in. That's in your business. Yeah.
Yep.
That's the working in your business. And really it's the proof of concept, and it's trial and error. And, and it's, I don't know, it's also knowing the 4 stages of growth. And technically, if you look this up online, it'll say 5 stages of growth. The 5th stage is success. But I think that the 5th stage is the beginning of the next level. I don't ever see that as success. It's like, okay, that's the springboard to the next level or the next thing. But the 4 stages of growth, and we all have to go through them, is formulation, concentration, momentum, and stability. And a lot of people will get a lot of momentum in the beginning because there's all this excitement around it, but then it falls because there was never formulation. They got too much business coming in. Everybody said, oh my gosh, you're going to do that? Okay, I'll send you business. I'll start working with you. But the systems aren't in place. The foundation isn't built. And so it falls flat, and they have to rebuild anyway. So spend some time in formulation, spend some time in concentration. This is the end part of the business, right? Where you're spending time in that concentration and testing it and recording it and tracking it and changing it and going back to formulation in one area and working on another thing, so that you can create that momentum that allows you to get to that stability. But those things, I think a lot of people just want to get up to that 5th stage, that success, that landing zone. But what is it? I mean, what is it for you? Gosh, when I look back, I turned 61 last week, the day after Thanksgiving. I turned 61. And I remember when I was young, and I was probably 25, 26 years old. I already had 2 kids. I was already married for 7 years, right? I'm now married for 41. And, my goal, what I thought success way back then was a Mont Blanc pen, because if all these men were wearing suspenders, everyone's wearing their suspenders, and we're driving Beamers, right? The BMWs, and they called them Beamers, and they were doing all that, and they had those Mont Blanc pens, and I thought, oh my God, that's all I ever want, and back then they were $199. Now they're $599. But I remember the day I got that Mont Blanc pen, and I would meet with clients and unscrew the top quietly and let them see that look at me, I have this Mont Blanc pen, and I have it in a cute little holder, and I would hold it in a way that they knew that I was successful. But I think I had it about 8 months, and the threads started getting all funky. So I pulled it apart, and all the ink spewed on back then women wore suits that looked like men's suits, right? So it was all over the suit. And I thought, this is not success. Who told me that this was success? This is not what I want.
What was in your head? I remember it's so funny you say Mont Blanc. I had it didn't screw off. It pulled off, but it was no, it actually was a screw, but it was like a almost like a plaid kind of print. It was like silver with black, and it was $200. It was a gift from somebody, and I was at a client's, and I put it down for like 5 minutes, and I came back and it was gone.
Oh gosh.
So I was like,
there goes my success.
It wasn't that. It was like, how do you walk into a business and then accuse tell the owner, one of your
Yeah.
employees just stole my pen.
Yeah.
Like, how petty is that, right?
No,
So
I think I would have looked at, if that happened to my Mont Blanc, I would have said my success is gone, right? Because that was my definition of success, right?
Yeah, but for me, it was just like, I finally got it. Now it's, that's just, and you're right. Success is different to
everybody.
People, right?
Yeah, just stop chasing. Yeah, I have a client about 3 years ago. He said to me, I don't ever want to do more than this amount of income, revenue ever, because that means I have to work too much. So I said to him, well, how'd you do last month? And he said, I made X. And I said, oh God, I'm sorry. He said, why? And I said, well, because you said you didn't want to make more than X. I'm sorry that I had you work so hard. And he goes, no, I want to know how I can make more. Right? Because he finally realized what it was. But what he was trying to achieve is time with his family. He didn't want to work that hard. But we worked on and this is specifically what I help people with, is how do you do the volume that other people do, the revenue that other people do without having to work so hard. And Les Brown says this. I had the wonderful privilege of being on his speaking faculty before COVID. And he says, if you do what's hard, your life will be easy. If you do what's easy, your life will be hard. And what I learned was, I thought it was hard work, right? I thought it was working hard, long hours, all that stuff. And what I realized is it is the hard work for a short period of time, not the working hard. And if we can all realize it's not about the hours you put in, it's the quality of the hours you put in. And so anyway, so I was able to help him figure out how to do more than what his goal was in half the time, a third of the time, whatever the number was. And now we had freed up time where he could do more business and still have that time that he wanted with his family and friends and golf and whatever he does, And I think we have to do that.
No, I agree. It's so funny because when we look at, I know when I was like in my 20s and 30s, what I thought success was, and I just turned 64 and I've been running my business for 10 years. I only have, the one business, excuse me. And in that 10 years, so much happened, right? So a lot of good, a lot of holy shit, what were you thinking moments? And then a lot of, okay, this is like, I'll say about 3 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago, I got really clear on what I wanted to do, how I wanted to help my clients. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, if I can't help them, I can't work with them, right? So I want to make sure that, I know, that I have a good plan in place, a good blueprint to be able to help them succeed. And when that became clear, that was it. Everything just kind of clicked and, moved forward. Yeah,
I mean, what you're really talking about is niching. I say all the time, that if you're selling everything to everyone, you're selling nothing to no one.
Oh, 100%.
Never have I ever seen a commercial by Starbucks for their yogurt. Never have I seen a commercial by Starbucks for their pops. They only market their coffee, either cold or hot, but they only market their coffee. And then when you come in, you can see all the wonderful other things that they offer. So niching and being specific and having a very targeted market or a high level of expertise. Mine happens to be team building, right? And scaling. And team building so you can scale. Can I do networking? Absolutely. Can I do hiring? Absolutely. Can I do marketing? Sure. I can do all of that. But that's where my specialty is. My tranche is there. And if someone wants too much marketing, I have to refer them to somebody else. I can do some, but I know what my levels are and I know where my expertise lives. And because of that, it allows for me to have a higher price point per client because it's not just the time that you and I dedicate to our clients. It's all the experience that comes behind it.
Yes.
And that's priceless.
It's just, you say that. And I had a conversation with somebody. I was in a networking group. I don't know, like 6 months ago. And I was talking to a lawyer and he said, like trying to explain to people, that if I do something pro bono, that, it really costs this much. And I said, then Mark, what you need to do is what I do. So what I'll do is if I'm helping somebody, I'll send them an invoice with how much it is, and then I'll zero it out. But I want them to be able to see that value.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I'm giving you. I'm gifting you this. And he started doing that, and it made such a big difference for him, because he said, now people understand that when they talk to me, it's $3.50 an hour.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is. So if I'm talking to you for 15 minutes, lawyers normally charge by the minute. It's not like, 15-minute chunks. It's like, if you're talking, this is how much you're going to get charged. So, and I think that when people understand the value of something, it changes.
Yeah. I think for business owners, so, if you're listening to this, you want to hear this, you hear a lot of coaches tell you, how much do you want to make this year? Which, by the way, I'm okay with that as a starting point, but I don't believe in goal setting because I think it limits you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'll tell you about that. And let me tell you about that, but don't let me forget about that dollars per hour. But, if your goal is to serve 100 clients, or to make 100, repair 100 roofs, whatever you do for a living, your goal is 100. And by June, if you track, I call it halftime, because at halftime, you go back into the locker room and you figure out, am I winning the game or losing the game? And what adjustments do I need to make? Right.
I like that. Yeah.
So if at the half year you're at 30, most people will quit on money and say, well, I've only gotten to 30 and I'm supposed to do 100. So I'm short 70. So I guess I just won't make my goal. If you're at 70, we're human. We're going to say, hey, I've already done 70. I only have to do 30. Well, heck, if you did 70 in the first 6 months, why couldn't you do 90 in the second? But the reason why you're stuck on this $100, this 100 serving, clients, is because you set out a goal. So my philosophy is to focus on the activity that gets to that goal. And if you're constantly looking at those activities and doing purposeful, purpose-driven every single day, not wasting your time, then you're going to exceed that goal. You're going to look up and exceed that goal. It happened to me. That's how I got in the top 200. I had no idea. I was doing $50 million a year in loan production, and all I wanted to do was $50 million. I wanted to do it in four days a week. When I got the plaque in the mail in my office, I had no idea it was coming. I open up that plaque and I find out that I am on the top 200 loan officers in the country out of 1 million. So I start going down the list because I'm competitive, right? I'm not 1, I'm not 2. Oh my God, I'm not 50. I'm not 100. Where am I? Am I on this list? Did they make a mistake? And I was 178. And I scrolled over to the volume, and the volume was 102 million. And I was doing it at 4 days a week. So that's what happens when you focus on the activity, the purpose-driven, the intentional activities, rather than focusing on the goals. So the goal is a great place to start, but it's not the only place. And people do way too much emphasis on that. And I think every time you'll exceed the goals if you do the job, if you do the activities. Yep. But the thing about the hourly, that I hear a lot of coaches say, if you make $100,000 divided by this, divided by that, times this, whatever, they come up with whatever, formula they want to use on how much you're worth an hour. And if it comes down that you're worth, and by the way, to be a millionaire, it's $340 an hour. But if you are at $100 an hour, our tendency is to say, well, now I'm going to charge my clients $100 an hour. But see, you're worth more than that. That's just what your time is worth. Now let's add in your expertise.
Yes.
And this is where people fail so often. So hear me on this. You are not worth the dollars. You're worth the dollars plus the experience.
Right. And
that's where your price point needs to be.
Yeah. And that's what I was trying to get to, was they're paying for, your education. They're paying for your experience. They're paying for your skill set, right? I mean, because they can't. There was this thing.
Resources, connections.
All of it. Mm-hmm. There was this thing where this guy said, I just read this the other day. This guy wanted this deck built, and they showed a picture of this deck that is way, whatever. And so the deck builder said, I could do that for $1,500. And the guy goes, $1,500? Why I'll just do it
I saw
myself.
this video.
You saw this, right?
A set of
So
stairs.
because I'll give you the material and well, I still don't know how to do it. And then at the end, he's like, just take the $1,500 because,
Right.
and people, you really have to kind of steer people to that because they don't understand it. I have a client who's, a very successful executive coach. And, she gets what she gets because she was the COO of Mercy Housing for 12 years, right? So, she lived it. So when she's coaching these executives, she's not just coaching them because she's an executive coach. She's coaching because she lived it and she understands and she's empathetic. And she's amazing. She's like one of my favorite people.
Well, and I think that's also an elevation to mentorship, right? There's a difference between a coach and mentorship. Mentor is walk the walk. A coach typically, and I mean, there's some other pieces of it. Really, coaching and mentorship is just like management and leadership. It's the same thing. One is more, vision driven, getting feedback. The other's task oriented, right? And I get that. But most coaches have never played the football game. They just know the game.
Right.
Players that are coaches have been there.
Right.
They know what it takes and they know the pitfalls and they know when you're about ready to hit a wall and they know when you're about ready to accelerate and they know when there's watch out for this part going up the mountain because I've been there. Right. And I think that that's why, people can command and demand more money because they are mentors, not really coaches. I mean, they're using the word coach, but it's really a mentor.
It's really a mentor. Yeah, that's a good point. I speak to this entrepreneurial group. We have a college here, Ivy Tech, and I'll talk to them. They'll call me in every quarter to speak to the new group. And this last group that I spoke to, there was one kid he was 18, which I didn't realize he was 18, and they wanted to do mobile welding. Mm-hmm. I said, "That's fantastic." I mean, how many people would have a mobile welder, and then somebody was like, well, who would need that? And I'm thinking an iron worker, somebody who's working on their house. There's like a million, different things that you could do with that. And he said, the only problem is my brother. I said, well, what's with your brother? He goes, well, he's the one who does the sales and no, I do the sales. He does the actual welding. I said, so you can't get him to do the welding? He goes, well, I can't get him to, get going. I said, well, have you done any sales? He said, well, no. I said, so how is he supposed to do the welding if you haven't done the sales, right? There's like nothing for him to weld. So, and then I wasn't being demeaning, but I was like, I said, so how old are you? Because there were a couple of older people and I mean like, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever. But, he goes, well, I'm 18. I said, okay. I said, how old's your brother? And he said, well, he's 23. I said, okay. I said, so the advice that I would give you right now is to look who needs this service because you want to start this business. I don't blame you, brother, because if I didn't have any sales and I don't have a job to do, I'm going to keep my job, whatever.
Right.
So,
right.
But the look of when the light bulb went off, he was like, oh, I have to sell stuff for him to do stuff. It was, it's like,
well, I mean, this is why. Yeah, this is why coaching and mentorship, masterminds, having a advisory board, for your business is so critical because we can't see our own ears. We just can't. We can't see. And I've had coaches of mine tell me, "Don't you coach on this?" Yeah, actually, I do. And he goes, well, then why aren't you doing it? And I go, because I can't see my own ears. That's why I hired a coach.
Yeah.
We just can't, and I can see it in others, but I'm not seeing it in myself, and that's why it's so important. And honestly, I wouldn't work with a coach who didn't have a coach because then they think they're the know-it-all. Now, in between coaches is fine,
right?
But you got to get a coach. Everybody, Tony Robbins has a coach, right? Whoever the political, people have coaches. The high-end people have coaches because they need someone to see what they can't see. And if your coach doesn't have a coach, then they think they see it all.
Right. Well, I don't know if I told you this when we talked, but I had a coach 8 years ago who said, you know, I needed to be less me. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you're a New Yorker in Indiana and you're trying to sell your services. So you need to, pull back a little. And I said, okay, that kind of makes sense. So I did. And I was getting business, but as soon as the real me came out, I didn't keep him. So I fired him because it was like, I needed to be authentic. I didn't need somebody to tell me to be less me.
Well,
I needed right? I needed somebody to be like,
you don't want someone to squash your personality.
No, I just left the networking group because, at the end of the day, it's like, there's like a thing out there, I'm not intimidating, you're intimidated. And, if you're intimidated, I'm not going to make myself small for anybody. I'm just not going to do it. Right. Yeah. So, and it was because
that's a jealousy and an envy anyway. I mean, I've heard that all my life that I intimidate people, but if you're watching this instead of listening to it and you see that we're two different women, we have two different styles, we have two different temperaments, right? Personalities. And we're both considered intimidating. That's their problem.
It's funny. Yeah.
That's their problem.
And I just kind of laugh because I know I have an alpha personality. That's who I am, but that's what's made me successful.
Yeah.
Is because I can walk into somebody's business and, I was told that I was a strategic listener. So when I walk into a business and I sit down and I learn about them, the front part of my brain is listening to everything that they're saying. Yeah. The back part is like going, okay, how are we going to help this? And then I'll get like these little downloads, right? It's like, oh, this is, right off the bat, this is one thing that I would look at. And the other thing that I do is go in and praise them on the stuff that they're doing well.
Yeah.
Right? It's like
recognizing
you're doing a great job here. You're doing a great job here. You could probably, this is the area that you could use a little help and I can help you here. But everything else you're doing is fantastic. I've seen people go into businesses and they're like, what the hell are you thinking? Why would you do it that way? And I'm thinking, why would you talk to somebody that way? And you want them to...
Yeah. Well, most people, I think the other thing too, I do a gap map with all my clients. And I think the one thing to understand, especially as a mentor to people, is that not everybody has to do it the way I do it, the level that I do it, the breadth that I do it, the depth that I do it. Okay. Not everybody has to do it the way that we, became successful. And now that's going to be the way we're going to coach everybody. I think that is so wrong. And some people I find, at least on the entrepreneurial side, if they were to rank, from 1 to 9, I like the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, because I can't understand what 4 or 7 or 8. I can't. How do you quantify 8? I just don't get it. So anyway, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. But if, you don't have to be a 9 in social media unless you're following someone else's dream. If you're doing well and you don't need social media, then don't do social media.
Right.
And so when we do our gap map, we don't try to make everybody perfect. You don't have to reach 9 in every category. Maybe you want to be a 5. Maybe you want to do random acts of marketing on social media, then do random acts of marketing. But if you're not doing anything and you want to do random acts and you're going from a 1 to a 5, then we'll work on that. But we don't need to work on getting you to a 9 if you don't want to be in that area. And, a lot of people don't like networking. I don't want to get into a whole conversation about that, but a lot of people just don't understand what networking truly is.
Right.
And so they stand back from it. Some stand back because they're introverts. Okay, well, let's find another way. Let's explore, if you're an introvert, let's explore another way that you can network with people. And a lot of times they're great one-to-one. So let's figure out, how do we get you into one-to-one situations? The other side of that is someone who is a great networker, and I call them squirrels because they run around asking for everybody's info and they stuff their mouths with nuts, and all they are is just a bunch of squirrels going around and they're not getting any results. Well, then we have to look at, how are you networking? So if you're okay doing that, that's great. You're an extrovert. But let's figure out what you could do, a tweak, maybe a revamp. I don't know. We have to look at it and see what that DNA is. What's your personality like? Is it strong? Is it stand backish? Are you a giver? Are you a taker? What are some of the things that we need to be looking at? What do you say to people now? Are people even interested, or are you just gathering information? So if networking is not working for you, it might be that we just need to make a little adjustment. Or throw it away altogether because it just doesn't fit your personality, and we'll find another mechanism to do it.
Right.
And I think that's the important thing with gap maps. A lot of people have these gap maps where they rank you and they go, okay, add them all up. And then you're ranked 33 out of 100 and you start feeling bad about yourself. And your coach is like, yeah, that'll make me look good. So if I can get them to a 50, I'll look good.
Wow.
Right. And that's not fair to the client because they don't need to be perfect in all areas. None of us do.
No. So, for what you have like 18 different businesses. So what is the main business that you focus on?
Yeah, my main business is speaking and mentoring, right? That's my main business. I speak like this in order to get opportunities to speak or to have conversations with clients and, bring clients on. That's my main business. My husband and I own a substantial amount of real estate. Again, we're in the mortgage business. So why wouldn't I have that product? Why wouldn't I own real estate? So we own a lot of real estate. So we run that business. We don't manage all the properties, but we run the business. And then I have Airbnb business as well. My husband has a business as well. And separate from mortgage. We actually worked together for a while. But he has a business as well. But then under all of these things, as I'm speaking to you now, my company is Kinetic Spark Consulting. That's my umbrella. But under this umbrella, I have a company for being a podcast host, for being a podcast guest, for speaking, for my books. For every one of my podcasts, I have 3. So each one of them have their own entity to create separation for anything that I might say on a podcast. And so that requires a lot of that work as well. And then I have a private lending entity, I'm just going to call it that way, where I speak at, real estate guru 3-day events where they go, hey, learn how to fix and flip or do tax liens or whatever. And I go there and I speak about investing and about mortgages as a consultant now. Because there's so many people that think they have to go in the back alley to get that first deal and they don't. And so I speak to that. And some of my coaching is creating wealth through real estate. But I don't teach tax liens. I send you to the person who teaches tax liens. I'm just the fiduciary pulling it all together and suggesting what you might want to invest in based on what you have and your experience, et cetera. But so I have the private lending company. So I go out and do all that speaking. And then the leads that come from that, I give to my daughter who has that company and she runs that company. I still have a percentage of ownership, but she runs the company for us. So yeah, we have, all in all 18 companies that some are sub companies. It's just silly stuff, but yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to do, but we do it once a month for a full day.
Okay. So how do people find you for the different things? Because there's like a million things that you do. Is there like one place that they can go?
I would just say, I'm all over social media. I'm either there as Lady Jen or Jen, but you'll find me all over social media. But the best way, and I'm not really good at going in and responding to people. So, I just don't, because most of the messages that we all of us get, right, are, I think you should buy from me. So I don't do that. And I don't do that to people either. I have a very boutique company. I want to meet with people. I want to talk to them to see if they're a good complement for me and my practice and vice versa. So the best way is to go to my website at jenduplessis.com, and then you can contact me there, or you can text me, text the word Jen, Jen, to 26786, and you'll get in my world. And from there, you'll have the opportunity to have a strategy call with me. If that's something you want to do, if you feel, that, hey, I need you from day one, or I need you to scale, or I need you to help me transition, out of corporate into entrepreneurship, we'll just have a conversation and see if it fits.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you. We're over an hour already, which is so funny. People, I'll tell people that the podcast is an hour and they're like, oh my God, an hour. And I'm like, it just goes so fast.
Oh yeah, it flies by. Plus you can divvy it up. You have all kinds of stuff to divvy it up with. Yeah.
I mean, true. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day.
Of course. My pleasure.
All the places to find you will be, and the socials will be in the show notes. And the last question that I ask all my guests is, what lights your fire?
My family. My family by far. Yeah. Everything I do is for my family. Everything I'm creating, the legacy, the dynasty, whatever you want to call it, is for my family, right? My kids. Even what I'm doing as a lady, and I may level up, in the order. And, if I do, then I'll leave that legacy for them. I'll be able to give someone that title. So I'm hoping that, I'm leaving a legacy for my family. So when I wake up, I don't think time to make the donuts. I'm just looking for who can I help so that I can help my family.
Wow. Yeah. I love that a lot. All right. Well, thank you. Hang on one second. I'm going to say goodbye and I'll be right back. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging in for an hour plus. Click the subscribe button, like, share, review, leave a review. Also, let us know what nuggets you've gleaned from this episode. Let us know in the comments. Really appreciate all of you for here we are, the beginning of season 4. We have a lot of really good guests coming up, so keep watching. And again, I want to thank you. And until next time, go out and find what lights your fire. See ya.